Hello there. Why don't you pull up a chair and pour yourself a drink? Because on this episode, at Top It Off, we're going to be talking about Savage Worlds by Pinnacle Entertainment. Now, you're probably wondering, but Vamp, why are we talking about Savage Worlds? Well, the reason for this is because I want to talk about a lot of really cool things that Savage Worlds has done in a lot of various settings that use this as its system. And as such, I want it so that when I start talking about, well, aces or bennies, dramatic tasks, target numbers, and the like, that you got a lot, don't look at me like I'm a crazy person. Well, a crazier person. So, anyway, get comfortable because today we're digging into Savage Worlds. Now, Savage Worlds is a RPG that describes itself as fast, furious, and fun. Now, you may be wondering, well, how can an RPG be fast, furious, and fun? Aren't RPGs full of lots of statistics, random integers, quadrilateral planes, and tons of arcane formulae? Well, if you're listening to Dipper explain Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons in the episode the same name of Gravity Falls, or you're playing the famous internet joke, or well, it's not really a joke RPG, but the joke of Fatal, where you can die in character creation or have negative anal circumference. Yeah, don't play Fatal. Well, if that's your biggest exposure, then yeah. Savage Worlds doesn't do that. Savage Worlds, be it an attribute or a skill, it's all done with with the polyhedral dice. So it's all very simple. Instead of having some number that gives you an arbitrary bonus, it is a die. All stats and skills start at a d4. You can then increase them to d6, d8, d10, or d12 in that order. So if you need to make a skill check or a attribute check, you just roll the dice. Pretty simple. Now you probably are wondering, well, what about numbers? What number are you trying to beat? Well, in most cases, the target number is 4, which actually gets into another system. In Savage Worlds, depending on what attribute or skill you're using, special things can happen when you get over that. If you get an 8, that's called a rise. You get a 12, that's a double rise. And again, depending on the skills, attribute, or setting, will determine what happens, which can be very, very, very good and very beneficial. Likewise, another term that applies to this is ace. Ace is what happens when you get the max number on your die. What that allows you to do is roll the die again, and you can add the 2 results, and that is your new number. And, well, that's basically how you do attributes and skill checks. Pretty simple. After this, it's time to talk about character creation. Now, Savage Worlds character creation can be a little weird or wonky because it's kind of a point-by system. You have a 5-point budget to raise your attributes. You have a 15-point budget to raise your skills, and you can receive more points by taking hindrances. Now, as previously said, you raise these by die. If you start off with something, it's at d4, then d6, d8, yada yada yada. And so, well, weird, if it's not something you're used to, still fairly simple. Now, besides your skills and attributes, there are also edges and hindrances. Now, for a basic human character, you can get 2 edges, because humans gain an extra edge. Otherwise, if you have a race or something, you only get 1. Unless your setting says otherwise. But you can also take hindrances, which come in 2 types: minor or major. A minor hindrance gives you a point that you can use to either get some extra money or another skill point, or you could take a major hindrance, which would give you 2 points, which you could use to either raise an attribute, choose another edge, or get 2 skill points. It's all pretty simple. And both edges and hindrances come in two major flavors. They are either role playing edges or hindrances, such as connections or enemies, or they are mechanical, such as maybe you have bad eyes. So without your glasses, you suffer a negative 1 or 2 on spot rolls or to hit rolls without your glasses. So there is a very, very nice mix. Now, before moving on to combat, it should be said that Savage Worlds does not have classes. There are archetypes presented in the main book and in the various source books, but these are templates. These are not classes that are very rigid, they are just ideas to help you create the kind of character you want, or if you're pressed for time, you can just take it, maybe change 1 or 2 things, and, get on with playing. Now, combat in Savage Worlds is different. It's not good, it's not bad, it's different. For all characters have a parry and a toughness. Parry is what you must beat with your attack roll, be it shooting, punching, what have you, to see if you hit your target. Well, toughness is the amount of damage you must do for them to suffer a wound. That is it. If you don't beat their parry, you just don't hit them. And if you beat their parry but you don't beat their toughness, they can then be rendered stunned or shaken. And in the default rules, before you can actually hurt somebody, thus give them a wound, you must first shake them. Now, whether that rule works for you or not is dependent upon your game. I actually found through experience that just not even having that rule for a session of East Texas University didn't hamper anything at all. But again, depends on the situation. Now, initiative in the default rules are handled by playing cards, where you deal out a card to everybody, including the monsters, with the face cards being higher up and then going down. So if somebody got a king, a 10, and an 8, well, the king would go first, then the 10, then the 8. All very simple. Another thing to go over is the use of bennies. Bennies are sometimes called action points or fate points in other systems. Basically, at the start of a session, everybody is given X amount of bennies, depending upon edges, hindrances, setting rules, what have you. And depending on the setting, there might even be multiple kinds of bennies. But bennies can allow you to add a bonus, soak or wound, which is a fancy way of taking some damage off yourself by taking kind of a hindrance, or getting a bonus, or doing a reroll. All pretty simple stuff. And there are even some powers in other books that require the expenditure of a penny. But I think that's all that needs to be said on combat. Well, now that we've gone over character creation and the like, it's now to answer a very simple question. Well, now that we have the basics of Savage Worlds and how it works, well, what kind of games is it good for? Well, probably an easier question would be to ask, well, what kind of games isn't it good for? Savage Worlds is a generic system. As such, this little book, which is only $10 and it is all full color, gives you the tools to, well, play in almost any genre and world you want. And if you're not feeling all that creative, or you're just a lazy GM, Savage Worlds has one of the best RPG communities out there. They have an entire homebrew and conversion subforum, and there are tons of tools and assets made by other users. Some of the ones I actually use myself and highly recommend the ones used by Zadmar. I will put a link to his website in the description. He has done marvelous things using the default system here and expanded on them. One of his best, especially to all those people who complain about the powered system, is his Savage Spellbook, which just shows how you can take these basic powers and tweak them ever so slightly to make almost any kind of spell and magic. It's quite beautiful, really. And I think that's a good segue. Savage Worlds does not have spell list as you know it. It has a list of powers. Various offensive powers like Bolt or Blast, or Pummel. Defensive powers like Shield, and more, well, typical powers like Healing or Boost and Lower Trait. Now, you need to get this notion out of your head. These are powers, but powers do not equal spells. These are the basics. It's the engine that drives the spell, or the ability, or the weapon. Because these powers, in the arcane backgrounds provided for you, are used in quite a few very interesting ways. There is an arcane background for wizardry, for clerical magic, psionics, superpowers, and super science, or weird science as they call it. And they all use the same powers, and they just tweak how they work ever so slightly to make it make the system new, which, quite frankly, blows my mind. Now you're probably asking, well, if all the powers are the same, then what makes them different? The beauty of Savage Worlds is this simple word, which, when you're first going on the forums, you may think it's used a lot, and at times it is. That word is trappings. Trappings is, it's how you dress up the engine, or how you tweak things for the engine, so that, to make it different. You could add a fire and heat trapping to Bolt, and make it, now it's a fireball. Similarly, you could add necromantic and shadow to it, and make it be a vampire, sucking out a soul. And it all is feasible. Now, and in default Savage Worlds, there are 5 arcane backgrounds. Now, as said, they all use the same powers, but they all do things differently. The first arcane background is Magic, which gives which its arcane skill is spellcasting. You get 10 power points and 3 starting powers, and if you roll a 1, the wizard is automatically shaken, which can cause a wound. Well, then there is Miracles, still 10 power points, but you only have 2 powers, and instead of having a backlash, it has rules that if you violate the creed of your faith, you actually get negatives to casting your faith. Then there is Psionics, 3 powers again, but instead you actually get on a 1 you get something called Brain Burn, which can cause you to become shaken. On a critical failure, you actually cause a psychic scream that not only will shake you, but everybody in a large burst template who fails a spirit roll. Then there are superpowers, where each power is a skill. You get 20 points, but only 1 starting power. Then, here's where things can get real fun. Weird science. Now, you only get 1 power and 10 power points, but those power points aren't yours. They're the battery of your device. Because with weird science, each one of your powers is some sort of device. So if you have a bolt power, you may have a laser gun. If you have a burst power with flames, it may be a fire-breathing mask. Lots of fun stuff. But because this is weird science, things can malfunction. And whenever you roll a 1 to activate the gizmo, you must draw a card, and depending upon the suit of the card, will determine the well, malfunction. Clubs cause catastrophic malfunction. Hearts are just a major malfunction. Diamonds minor. And spades are just a glitch. Now, an example of catastrophic malfunction is the device goes kaboom. 2d6 damage, large burst download. A major malfunction just means it breaks and it's going to take a while to fix. Minor is, it's just kind of having a little hiccup and can be repaired at a -2. Well, glitch causes whatever it to do the exact opposite. The example they give is an invisibility belt makes the caster glow brightly. Weapon fires at a random target, what have you. And it does say if a reverse effect makes no sense, treat it as a major malfunction instead. Now, I think that about covers our arcane backgrounds. Okay, now that we've talked about arcane backgrounds and powers in brief, it's time to talk about, well, setting rules. Setting rules are just the little tweaks to the actual rules that make each setting unique. Some examples of setting rules are, well, no PowerPoints. It is possible to have all the arcane backgrounds, all the spells, not cost a single PowerPoint by switching a PowerPoint cost out with a casting modifier, typically negative depending upon the power of the spell. Such settings that do that are East Texas University and Marchland, which we will get to. Other setting rules could be that certain PowerPoints for certain arcane backgrounds regen a lot slower, thus making you have to do more dangerous solutions if you really want to cast your spells. Deadlands is a good example. Or maybe you're tracking sanity or even humanity. Realms of Cthulhu and Rippers, which I have backed the Rippers Resurrected Kickstarter, so I hope I can review that soon. But the long and the short of it is, Savage Worlds is not a perfect system. No RPG is a perfect system. There's only RPGs that are perfect for your needs. Savage Worlds is Savage Worlds. The biggest problem with Savage Worlds would probably be if you're used to more hardlined attributes or to a system with hit points, then Savage Worlds might seem like strange voodoo to you. I should know, when I originally came into Savage Worlds, when I first heard of it, I was, a D&D player. I am a D&D player. Been one for years. So when I first looked at Savage Worlds, it seemed like strange voodoo to me. And can possibly seem like strange voodoo to you. Because, well, it's very different. But being different is not a reason against it. It's going to be one of those things that would take some getting used to, as with any new system. My biggest problems with Savage Worlds itself is the target number rule, where you have to get, just what the target number is, 4, is kind of hard to find, at least in this version of the book. I actually had to go to the index to find that. The target number, one of the crucial mechanics for this system, is hidden in one line, in a paragraph somewhere. Some other things against it. Well, it's a small gripe, but it's gripe nonetheless, is even though it's done, I understand, to keep costs down, I'd rather almost spend $10 for a hardcover in black and white and $10 for full color in paperback. I'm just picky that way. I like hardcovers. They just feel better in the hand. And that is not a joke for the internet to enjoy. But nitpicks aside, Savage Worlds is a very, very good system. It may take a little imagination, a little finagling at first, but you can run almost any game you want with this. Even without getting the companions or the official settings. Or hell, without even going online and getting some of the free resources other people have done. Savage Worlds can do a lot. You want to play a Mass Effect like space opera? You can do it with this book. You want to be Indiana Jones and go punch Nazis who are trying to raid the ruins of Atlantis? You can do this. You want to be a Jedi, you want to fight the Sith? You can do it. You want to go for the more traditional, Tolkien-esque, D&D-esque fantasy? Bro. You want to have a Weird West adventure? Savage Worlds was originally the Deadlands engine. In fact, Deadlands morphed into Savage Worlds. So this was born of the Weird West. And we'll get to Deadlands in a later episode. But what can I say about Savage Worlds other than this? It's $10, and I think almost every RPG player should own at least a copy of the Explorer's Edition. I think it is well worth the investment, and hell, even if you only use it to mine ideas for, I think it is a very good investment. And you can use this, as I said, to build almost any kind of game you want. It's a toolkit. It may not be as comprehensive or depth as... It's a toolkit. It may not be as comprehensive or in-depth as GURPS, but still, for $10, I think it's well worth the price of admission. So, I, Vamp, in my humble opinion, have to say this. You don't need to drown your sorrows if you have this book. This deserves a place on the shelf, and that's my final word on it. So till next time, this is Vamp, saying always keep your whistle wet, and hope to have more good things for you in the future. Get home safe, everybody.